All right.
right.
This is the Domestic Draft Podcast. I'm Evan Bierman here with Dan Sloak. Dan, what's going on, man?
What's up, man? Doing great. What are you drinking tonight, man?
So I've got, it's from Buffalo Creek Brewing is the brewery. It's in Long Grove, Illinois. It's about a 40-minute drive outside of the city. If you're not familiar with Long Grove, it was settled by German immigrants. It's got a long, rich German history. And so Buffalo Creek Brewing, when they were looking for a spot to build their brewery, they settled on Long Grove. They felt their beer styles and Long Grove's German heritage were a perfect match. Buffalo Creek Brewing has a Bavarian style tap room, event space, and a one-of-a-kind beer garden with beautiful views of the lawns and freshly trimmed pine trees in the area. The beer I have here is called Marvelous. It's a German style Kolsch. It's their flagship beer, so they got it year round. It's a 5.1%. It's 3.55 on Untapped. It's a light gold color, like a caramel color, good, easy drinking beer. Like I said, it's their flagship beer, so they got it year round. So go check it out at Buffalo Creek Brewing. What are you drinking?
Nice, man. I have a brewery out here in San Diego. It's called AleSmith. It's really popular out here. I'm drinking the 394 Pale Ale. It is 394 because that is career high batting average for Tony Gwynn, who is a really, famous Hall of Famer Padre. He collaborated with AleSmith for this. And just a little background on AleSmith. They were founded in 95 out here in Miramar, San Diego. Changed ownership in 2002. 2008, they really got themselves on the map by winning Small Brewing Company and Brewer of the Year at the Great American Beer Festival. In 2014, they were rated #1 best brewery in the world and #1 brewery in California based on consumer reviews at ratemybeer.com. And in 2015, not too long ago, they opened up a 1,000 square foot facility that's state of the art. And it actually has a Tony Gwynn museum in it. So I kind of need to go check that out. I put it on my list. And this beer, it's got a 3.9 on Untapped. Really good beer, really consistent, does a good job. I've had it a couple times at the ball game.
Sounds like Tony.
Yeah. Career 394 batting average is wild. And so we'll get right into it. We're going to bring on our guest. I'm stoked for this guest. I've been following him for years. His name is Steph Noh. He's been writing for the NBA. He's an NBA freelance writer. He's been writing for the Bulls for a couple of years. That's how I got to follow him. He's written articles for The Athletic in the past, and you can find his most current work at stephnoh.substack.com and on Twitter at Steph Noh. Steph, thanks for being here, man. How you doing?
Thanks for coming on.
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for inviting me over for a beer.
Of course. Yeah, we saw you opened it. What are you drinking?
So my brother, I have a twin brother, identical twin brother, and he lives in Austin, Texas. I'm in New Orleans, so we're not too far away. He brought me a bunch of beers last Thanksgiving and haven't gotten around to drinking them, but I heard that stouts actually, they sometimes taste better like with age. So giving that one a try. This is a Convict Hill Oatmeal Stout.
Nice.
Yeah, 88 on Beer Advocate. I don't know if that's
all right,
reputable site or not.
Hey, man, you've been doing this for a while. Sounds perfect.
Yeah, but it's pretty good.
Cheers. Awesome, man. Cheers, man. Like I said, I've been following you for quite some time. I'm really excited that you're on the show, but I don't really know much about like how you got started writing. So I kind of just want to start there of like, what were your beginnings? How did you start writing for the NBA? Did you do other things beforehand? So I'm just curious about like how you got into this and how you broke through.
Sure. I did a lot of very random things before I started writing. I think that most people that end up writing about sports, like they are generally in a privileged position where they can afford to do it for free for however long it takes before they get a break. So that was definitely the situation with me. I was playing, actually, I still do play poker professionally. So I was able to have some free time to just work on my hobbies and basketball. I mean, growing up in the 90s in the Chicagoland area, like you just were forced to be a Bulls fan, basically. So basketball was always a big passion of mine. And yeah, I started writing for some of the like fan websites. SB Nation was the big one. And I just got really lucky with the timing of The Athletic. It was January 2016 when they started. And they hired me in February of 2016. So I was fourth employee over there. I did all of their NBA coverage for the first couple of years. And did that for 4 years. Then now I'm doing independent writing. So yeah, just moving on to whatever opportunities present themselves, I guess.
That's awesome. So, all right. So the poker stuff, I got to ask you some follow-up questions on that. You're
Yeah.
still playing. Was it like an everyday thing? I guess if you're doing that as your main career, right? I mean, how often did you play? Did you go to big tournaments? Did you do World Series of Poker? Start with those questions, I guess, first.
Yeah. So I moved out to Las Vegas in my 20s. I was there for about a decade. And yeah, I just hit up the casinos on the strip. I would play 25 to 30 hours a week. It's a pretty intensive job, so it's hard to play a lot of hours. Just it's like very mentally draining. So that's also why I was able to explore these other hobbies and stuff because yeah, you really can't play more than that, I guess. So yeah, I would play in the World Series. I went I don't know, 14 straight years or something. I didn't play in the main event, which is the $10,000 tournament that most people know about, but they have a bunch of smaller tournaments. It's like I think it's like 2.5 months, the whole series. So I would be in town. So yeah, I would just be playing at the casino while all that stuff was going on. Yep. Just living the life of the professional gambler for a very long time.
That's awesome. Is not what I thought. I didn't, and not prepare for professional gambling questions. That's so interesting.
It's not very common. Yeah.
So then I wonder, because your work, and the reason I really enjoy following your work is you do a lot of like in-depth film breakdown almost. And I'm wondering, was that kind of like a little bit of a way that you kind of like a relief from that stress of gambling? Did you just go watch a lot of basketball and like just break it down and kind of just zone out that way? But I also sticking to the film breakdown, like how did you get into it? Do you have a background in basketball? Did you have some mentors that helped you what to look for? Because you're very in depth in your film breakdowns.
Yeah, so I guess it started. What really started my film stuff was when the website Grantland first came out, which I think it was 2014, and there was this guy Sebastian Pruiti, who is now an advanced scout for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But at the time, he was their basketball writer. Him and Zach Lowe were the two guys.
Okay.
But Sebastian was the guy that really started this whole wave of film analysis for basketball. And prior to that, the coverage for basketball, I would say, was really, really poor, to be honest. Like a lot of the analysis was like, this team did not try hard enough, or just like very, very results oriented thinking. Mm-hmm. And I was always wondering when I was watching these games, like why did this guy just get open for a lob dunk? Like who screwed up to make that happen? And there was no information out there and nobody giving that information on what was really going on in these games. So I kind of took it upon myself. I'm just like a very intellectually curious person in general. So I like searched for any tiny scraps of information that I could, and I just absorbed all this stuff. I just found it very interesting. So like it came very naturally to me. And yeah, Sebastian was like a huge, huge influence on my work. And then after him, I think Zach Lowe is, a lot of his stuff is taken from Sebastian too. So he carried the torch once Sebastian went into the league. But yeah, just that style of writing. I mean, especially with the Bulls, like the team was really good, in those D Rose years. I just felt like I always wished that, like when Zach Lowe wrote about the Bulls, I would always read his stories and be like, why can't we just have something like this for every game, or like somebody who's just doing this kind of work? And it was just like really frustrating for me that we didn't have that. So I just tried to, I guess, provide that and doing the best I can, I guess. But I guess that's where the genesis of that came from.
That then is going to have to lead me to my next question of like, you talked about your mentor. His name, I don't remember right now. What was his name?
Sebastian Pruiti. Like I didn't know him personally. I just read every single story that he wrote. And I actually did get to meet him last year, which was cool. But he really taught the game in a way that was not being discussed very much. So yeah, there's a lot of other writers that are doing the same thing. And that's, there's like a very small subset of writers that try to teach the game in like a very basic way for people to understand. So I just kind of followed all those guys and read every single thing that they wrote, and that's where I got like the baseline for my knowledge, I guess.
So then, is there aspirations to try to go into or an organization and get a job in a front office and do some like scouting or break or like, you know, like, I don't know.
That's more of a young man's game, to be honest. I would definitely do it if I was like 20 and single, but I have 2 kids now. I'm 37. You can see the bags under my eyes. I have like a 5-week-old crying all day today. So yeah, I mean, if the opportunity presented itself, I'd probably take it. But I think that lifestyle is just so difficult. They're usually looking for people definitely without kids and preferably that aren't married to just like devote their entire being to that job.
True. Yeah, I see you got the kids' artwork there behind you.
Yeah,
looks great.
This is Thanksgiving turkeys right here.
Nice.
Yeah. I got a little one myself. She's about to turn 1 this week, actually.
Oh,
so
congrats.
Happy birthday to my daughter, Sophie.
Yeah.
So everything that I've seen of your work has been the Bulls. And you mentioned you grew up in Chicagoland area as a kid, obviously grown up with the Bulls and Jordan in the 90s. Do you only write about the Bulls? Have you only ever written about the Bulls, or in your breakdowns, did you do other games as well?
Yeah, so I said I did all the athletic stuff for the NBA the first couple of years. So I helped start there. The second city they ever did was San Francisco Bay Area. So I did some Warrior stuff for them. I think the 4th city they did was Minnesota. So I did some Timberwolves stuff. But I mean, this stuff was not a lot. Like the vast majority of my writing is based on the Bulls. I was also a poker writer before I started doing basketball stuff. So yeah, a little bit of that too. And actually my wife was just reminding me of this today. Like the very first thing I ever wrote was when I was like 21. And I don't know if you guys, I might be dating myself here, but like back in the early 2000s, Craigslist had this section called Best of Craigslist.
Okay.
And yeah, people would just write these really silly posts. So I wrote one there that went kind of viral, and I think that's where I really got the bug for writing.
Nice.
Yeah, that was like 15 years ago or something.
What was it? What was it about? Is it not safe for work or what?
It is. I was thinking about sharing it. It's like super embarrassing. It's really bad. But yeah, one of my jobs pre-poker was I was. I don't know if you guys are familiar with AmeriCorps. It's like a volunteer program. That's it's like essentially like a domestic version of Peace Corps. So yeah, I was in this AmeriCorps program where I traveled around the country, and I was working with Habitat for Humanity. So the story that I wrote was about the struggles of just like using these super disgusting porta potties when you're a construction worker, and the techniques that you need to come up with in order to avoid like
to hover.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, so people really liked it. People really like poop stories. Maybe I should use that in my basketball writing, but yeah,
that was the beginning of your writing right there. So
that was the genesis.
That should have been the first answer to Dan's question. How did you get started?
How'd you get started?
I was writing about porta potties on Craigslist.
That is the truth. Yeah, that's the true story. You guys get the scoop. I have never told that story to anyone in a public setting before. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
All right, I want to dig into this Bulls team. I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing. Complete turnover. What do you think is like? What can you list maybe the top 3 reasons of success for this team this year?
I mean, the number one reason is they got rid of all Garpax's guys. Like literally 80% of the roster has changed over from last year, and Patrick Williams, like he's not a Garpax guy. So the only Garpax guys are Kobe and Zach LaVine. So yeah, those guys that, if you look back at those rosters, like 80-90% of those players aren't even in the league anymore. So yeah, they never had a chance, you know. Like I think a lot of reasons were given as to why the teams weren't doing well. I think like Fred Hoiberg really got killed when he was the coach. But he just never had any talent, you know. And Jim Boylan also got killed, and he also didn't have a lot of talent either, but he also was like a pretty bad coach.
He himself didn't have a lot of talent, right?
Right.
He's giving Arcidiacono like 30 minutes.
Yeah, he was like, that was the Giannis stopper, was Arcidiacono, which I don't really think it worked very well, but
No.
yeah, like the biggest thing is they just got good players, and I I don't know why it took like so much to make that happen. But you can see pretty much immediately when they brought in new management that the team just had a total turnaround. So I think it was very clear that management was the thing that was holding them back. You do like, the scientific, what is it? Forgetting the term right now, but like if you keep everything the same, but you only change one variable, then that's probably the reason why the results were what you were getting. So yeah, changing the one thing in management and then completely changing the team's fortunes, that's like a pretty good sign that that was what was holding them back.
So you mentioned Kobe White. How does he fit into this current roster? I guess what's his fit with this team with Io emerging kind of, and I mean, is he kind of taking his role? Do you think Kobe is maybe on his way out or a piece that they could potentially trade?
It's a good problem to have, right? I got that question a lot today, actually, on Twitter, and I don't really have a great answer. I think that they do need him because they're last, I believe, in 3-point shooting. Yep. So that's the one thing that he can do extremely well. He can get them off really, really fast. Like he just needs a tiny sliver of space, and he's pretty good as a catch and shoot guy. So it's going to be tough though, because Iowa's been playing so good. So I don't think you can play both of those guys like 20 minutes a game. Maybe Donovan will just ride the hot hand and see what happens, but that's why he's making 7 million or whatever, and I'm not. Yeah. So that's his problem.
Yeah, and I mean, so far, like through 10 games, Billy has been with losing Pat right away and having to juggle, the new players coming to the starting lineup there. I think he's been doing a great job, but today in your newsletter, you kind of highlighted that you would be pushing for Caruso to take that starting spot. Would you take Javonte Green out and put Caruso in there and go real small? Is that what you would do? And why would you do that?
Yeah, I like Javonte Green, but he just hasn't been playing very well as a starter. I think he's been pretty good defensively, but kind of like a zero on offense. Mm-hmm. So they would be a little bit small with Caruso in there. But, DeMar DeRozan would move to the 4 probably. And he's been doing that a lot, like over 3/4 of the time when he was with the Spurs. And even this year, like they're playing him a lot at the 4 or Lonzo at the 4. Lonzo's been guarding a lot of bigger players. I think people are surprised at how well he holds up there. So I think they'd be okay. Like their rebounding might suffer, but they're the best fourth quarter team in the league by a pretty wide margin, and it's because they play that lineup where they just switch whoever's starting, whether it's Javonte Green or Patrick Williams or whoever. They put Caruso in there, and they're killing teams. So it doesn't really make sense to me why they don't just do that more. Like if something is clearly like it's one of the best lineups in the league, then we should probably want to see that more. But I don't know. I'm sure Billy Donovan has a reason. Like he is way smarter than me. So, when they hired him too, like I was telling people, he's a really good coach. Like people, I think were kind of like meh on the signing, and then this year coming into the league, people thought that the team wasn't going to be that good, and I was trying to tell people like, Donovan has always gotten his teams to overachieve. I came up with this stat that he's never coached a team worse than 12th in defense. And I think this stat just like proliferated. I see it everywhere now, but yeah, he is a very underrated defensive coach. Whenever you hear about like the best defensive coaches, he's never mentioned, yet he always has amazing defenses that are way above their talent level. So he's doing it again this year. So he should definitely get all his flowers. And if he thinks that Caruso should be on the bench, he's probably right, but I would like to see him try and just see what happens.
Yeah, the team does a great job. You mentioned they would go small, but you watch this team, and if that main concern is rebounding, I mean, everybody is like volleyballing that basketball when it's going on the defensive, offensive end. Lonzo's getting in there. Caruso can get in there. So I could see that being a concern, but also this team is just active. They're going after the basketball and they're getting it. So maybe you're onto something. Maybe you deserve that $7 million contract.
I'll buy you guys around if I get it.
All right. That's what I like to hear. What do you think? I mean, I guess Arturis and Eversley, like them coming in, what do you think their best attribute is? Do you think they just like work together really well? Just that was like a good marriage from the beginning there. And, I guess what do you think they do best? I mean, obviously bringing in talent, that would be the easy answer. But do you think they had to do any like wooing to bring any of these free agents to Chicago? Because in the past, everybody, oh, Chicago's this destination that we can draw these free agents in. And it just like never really came to fruition, right? We never really brought in those big names that we thought we were going to get, Carmelo or LeBron or whatever. But now it seems like, DeRozan is a big name. That was a huge signing. I mean, what do you think those two do best? I guess, what are your thoughts on them in general?
So I think what they do best by far, and it's a stark contrast from the previous regime. I don't want to keep on killing the previous regime because, it's over, whatever, but those guys never made trades. Like they never made trades to improve the team. And they're very, very small and very secretive. I don't think they had great relationships throughout the league. So I think the biggest difference is that Arturis has been, first of all, he's been planning for this job for a very long time. I think he's been in the league like over a decade, maybe like slightly under 2 decades or something. So he's been planning for that long what he would do if he ever got control of a team. And you can see that he has everything that we heard about him is he's a very diligent, very thorough person. And you can see that in the plan that he's put this team together. And the other thing is like he went about hiring a general manager with the criteria that that person has a lot of connections in the league. And he also has a lot of connections in the league. He's worked for a lot of teams. They got a cap guy in JJ Polk, who's also worked for a lot of teams. And why that's important is in order to pull off trades, you need to have pre-existing relationships with other franchises because it takes a lot of grease to make these trades go through, especially the way that the Bulls are doing them, where it's very complicated deals where they're doing these multi-team, 3-team sign-in trades. So you have to get cooperation from a bunch of different parties. You have to have trust from those people and be able to convince them why these things are in their best interests. And Garpax just couldn't do that. I mean, they couldn't. Like the results speak for themselves. Like in one offseason, Arturis and Mark Eversley have done way, way more than John Paxson did in 17 years on the trade market. That's completely a result of that experience and just knowing so many different people across the league.
Yeah, I love to see it. As a fan, going through those tough times as well, where you just get so frustrated year after year after year, trade deadline, and we're just sitting on our hands. We're not improving our roster. We get this new front office in, and they absolutely, like you said, just turn it on its head. And it's been awesome as a fan to watch this new roster. But we do have some concerns, right? Pat Williams is out for the year. That power forward position is kind of like a revolving door right now. Like Javonte Green, right? He's starting. But also Derek Jones Jr. is getting some minutes in there. To me, they're both a little undersized. And I see that as their biggest weakness is being a little undersized come playoff time. How are they going to remedy that? Do they need to remedy that? Excuse me. And is that their biggest weakness, or do you see something different?
Yeah. I mean, I was talking about Javonte Green, not really cutting it as the starting power forward. So it depends on what their goals are. I mean, I really don't know what their goals are. Like, are they going to try to push this team as far as they can, or are they just trying to save something for next year? It's not really clear. I think that they had an option when they traded Markkanen, whether they wanted to take in Larry Nance or Derek Jones Jr. And Nance is a better player, but he was on a 2-year deal, and Derek Jones Jr. is on a 1-year deal. So similar money. It's around $10 million. So I think that what that tells you is either they want him to expire and they're going to use that money next year, or, and this is what I think is more likely, they want that piece to trade for something at the deadline. So like expiring deals are way, way easier to move than deals with 2 years. So what that tells me is they're going to try to get a player that earns around $10 million, see which teams fall out of contention. And that salary slot is also really good because this is going to go way too deep in the weeds, but there's just a lot of players that make between $8 and $10 million because there's a salary exception that a lot of teams use. So yeah, like come January, I think that we're going to see what the trade market looks like for these teams that fall out of it. And the Bulls also got an extra pick in the offseason. So I think they got that with the intent of packaging it with Derek Jones Jr. and trying to find an upgrade at the power forward position. So that's my guess. Of course, it depends on like who is actually available, but I think that's what's going to happen probably.
Okay, I was going to say, you sound like you've gamed this out a little bit. Do you have any names in mind at this point? I mean, it's early, but just for shits to see if you had any.
I don't have anyone in the trade market for that salary slot, but I do see I'm trying to keep an eye on like players that are just falling out of the rotation across the league. One guy, and I can't take credit for this. I have like a little Bulls DM group. I can't remember who came up with this one, but we were discussing Brandon Clark, who's on the Grizzlies. He had an awesome rookie year, but the Grizzlies have like 14 rotation players that are all like pretty solid. So he is just kind of like falling out of it. I think he just had 20 points the other night though, maybe yesterday or something. So maybe he's getting back into it, but he would fit the Bulls really nicely. Trying to think of some other names. We had Robin Lopez on the Magic, who's obviously been with the Bulls. He's not playing at all. The Bulls have a trade exception, which means that they can take in $5 million and not give anything back. That's just essentially, it just means that it would be really, really easy. If you see a player making 5 million or less, it's like super easy for them to get that guy. And if it's more than 5 million, then it gets like pretty tricky. So yeah, Brandon Clark is under 5 million. Robin Lopez is under 5 million. Chris Boucher was another name that I was looking at that's fallen out of the rotation in Toronto, and probably a lot of people haven't heard of him, but he's really good. Yeah. Like the reason why he's not playing is just because like he makes a lot of mistakes, and Nick Nurse doesn't like that, but he's very talented. So if he pisses Nurse off to the point where they just want to get rid of him, he would be a great signing. Yeah, some other names, but I can't really think of them right now. But they're guys, throughout the league already who are definitely gettable and better than what the Bulls have at that spot. So I'm sure they're doing their work in the Bulls front office and looking at these guys too. And I think they're going to add a piece before the year's over.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, the team's humming right now. The only one that really isn't humming is Vooch. And he's really kind of underperforming his career stats to this point. Specifically, that straightaway 3-point top of the key. That's like his moneymaker. He was leading the league last year in the percentage from there. And he's just not. Is he just like? Is he in his own head, or are you seeing something to where he's not getting his touches? Maybe. I know even in the first couple of games too, him and Zach had a good two-man game, and it's kind of been more like jump shot reliant. And I haven't seen Zach giving that ball up as much. He's just not getting his touches.
I'm surprised you know that stat. That's very obscure. You're like a super diehard Bulls fan, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Vooch has given a lot of reasons for why he struggled so badly. I think he's shooting like 37% or something from the field, which is obviously terrible, especially like for a center who's usually shooting right by the basket. Mm-hmm. So the reason he gave was that he always starts out slow, and also that he's adjusting to a new role in the offense. I think both of those are, I don't really believe them, to tell you the truth. So the starting out slow thing, this guy, Kevin Farragon, who is a friend of my newsletter, he looked into the stats for Vooch like every year for the past 8 years. And there was 1 year where he did start out kind of poorly, but the other 7 years, like he was always pretty good right out of the gate. I went a step further and I looked at his preseason stats because he was awful in preseason. He hit like 6% of his threes or something, even worse if you can imagine than during the regular season. So I saw the same thing. Like there were 2 years where he was pretty bad in the preseason. 1 year where he was like slightly bad, and then the other years he was really good right off the bat. So that excuse of I'm just a slow starter, I think he just kind of like made that up or something. I don't know. Like he just took 1 year and like extrapolated it to every year of his career. And then the other thing about role adjustments, like if you look at the shots that he's missing, they're wide open. They're like the easiest shots ever. Like he's getting better looks because he has better teammates. So I don't really understand. As you said, like he was so good at these above the break threes, and he's not even close. Like if you're watching the shots, they're like way off. So I think it's just like a confidence thing with him, honestly, or something. I don't know. Maybe he's like injured and nobody knows about it. There's something weird going on where we're not, all the answers that have been provided are not accurate, I would say. So I don't know. I think it'll just naturally resolve itself, but we really have no idea of how long it's going to take, which, kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Yeah. I mean, he missed like a wide open dunk in their last game.
Yeah. He had like a little gimme too, right at the rim and missed it long, bounced right back.
Yeah.
At
And he
him.
missed a wide open 3 too, where the closest guy was like 10 feet away from him. He passed up an open 3 where you could see Lonzo Ball was very frustrated that he didn't shoot it. So I think that's happening too, where he's passing up a lot of shots where he would normally take. That's also a sign that his confidence is kind of shot right now, which is unfortunate. But I mean, he's such a good player. Like, I think eventually he will get out of it. It's just, oh man, like we really don't know how long it's going to be though.
Yeah, and if one of your best players is struggling and you're 7-3, you're doing something all right to cover up for him. So gives him kind of some grace and some time to really figure it out on his own. So hopefully he figures it out.
So we got one last question for you. Where do you think this team ends up in the East? And I guess how deep into the playoffs? Because we're assuming playoffs for this team. How deep do you think they go?
So my preseason prediction was 46 wins, which was pretty against convention at the time. I think most national people were saying like 40 wins. And even like the local people were saying like 43, maybe something around there. So 46 was pretty high. If you look at a lot of people are doing these win projections that update throughout the year. I think most of them have the Bulls around 45 to 47 wins now. So that 46 is looking pretty good. And honestly, like I could see them going even higher than that. Like they're definitely a lot better. I was really high on them and they're even better than, what I thought. So as far as how far they're going to go in the playoffs, it's an interesting question because I think that, while I said that Donovan has been a very good coach, it's mostly like as a regular season coach, he's struggled in the playoffs. I think that he's been out coached in a couple of these series. So that's a little bit concerning, but the team is also built for playoff success. Like they have a lot of really good isolation players where when the games slow down, when it's more half court offense, like they have stoppers too, Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball, where they can guard that style of basketball. I think what's also really important for playoff settings is the ability to play different styles to your opponent. Like these games are way more heavily scouted, so you have to change things up. And I think the Bulls have shown already that they have an ability to do that. They've won a bunch of different games in a bunch of different ways. So that makes me confident. If they don't make any moves, I would say that they can probably get out of the first round. So second round exit. If they do upgrade the power forward position, then obviously it depends on who that player is. But I think that if they did, then they're going to get somebody who's very impactful, like a starter level player. So if that happens, maybe they can get out of the second round. Who knows?
Okay.
Cool. Let's hope so. I made some preseason bets with some friends.
Nice.
I have them finishing. My biggest argument, I think, before the season started was that they'd finish higher than Atlanta, which we'll see. That, I thought Atlanta was kind of a little fluky, but no, they're a great team. I have last question. I know Evan said it was the last, but I got to know, who's your favorite bowl? Do you have an obscure bowl that you just are a fan of, or do you have a favorite bowl of all time?
My favorite bowl is probably
Kriapa fan.
My favorite bowl is probably Tony Kukoc, but as far as obscure bowls, like before I started writing about the NBA professionally, my Twitter handle was Hungarian Jordan. That was kind of like when I signed up at all these Bulls message boards and stuff, it was always under that username. And the reason for that is that was the nickname of this player, Cornell David. They actually just mentioned him on the broadcast like 2 days ago, which I thought was really funny. But he was like Ayo before Ayo, basically. Like if you get the nickname Hungarian Michael Jordan, then you have to think that like you're way better than you probably are, that you just have this like irrational confidence about your game. That was definitely him. He had one game winner. He was on the 2000 Bulls that were like the worst team in the league. And he was just up there like playing like Michael Jordan, basically. But if Jordan only hit 30% of his shots,
Was that Eddie Curry's rookie year? Right around there. I think so, right?
Yeah, it was somewhere around there. Fred Hoiberg was on that team too.
Those
which
are
is kinda
tough.
interesting. Will Purdue was on that team.
Yep. I remember Eric Piatkowski was a little bit after that, right? The
he was
Polish
a little
rifle.
bit after that, but there weren't a lot of great players to choose from in that rebuilding team. So I just kind of latched onto this guy. I thought he was funny, he is my favorite obscure bull, I guess.
Awesome. Well, Steph Noh, thanks for being here today. Again, Steph Noh, you can find his work on stephnoh.substack.com. He's on Twitter at Steph Noh. And do you got anything coming up that you want to plug, or do you want to talk about your Substack and how that works?
Yeah, so the Substack is totally free. You can donate if you enjoy the content, but I write maybe like once or twice a week. I try to make it stuff that you can't find anywhere else. And I also tweet a lot of stuff, a lot of memes, a lot of stupid stuff.
The cat.
That cat video.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was a good impression. Yeah, I'll download this YouTube video and cut you in on the next one.
Just do it.
Yeah.
All right, man. It's been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come join us. Much. We really appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
All right, man.
Have a good one.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers. All right. So that was Talking Bulls with Steph Noh. Let's go to the other team that was playing last night. That is the Chicago Bears against the Steelers. And that was quite a doozy to watch, Evan. What do you think?
Terrible. I mean, terrible first half, right? Right out of the gates, Najee runs that one in. They scored on us almost like immediately. And I was like, this is going to be another Tampa Bay Bucks. We're going to lose 35-3 or 40, to 3. But they turned it around in the second half. The problem was it was too little too late, right? First of all. And second, the penalties killed us all game long. Monday night, Bears lost 29-27 to Pittsburgh, late Pittsburgh field goal. Unfortunately, Bears are 3-6 now going into the bye week. But, those penalties, I think, has been the talk of the Twitter sphere for sure. Mm-hmm. Rightfully so, you think?
Yes. I think this is too, like one of the few times, because I feel like Bears fans are always like arguing about the refs and how they're out to get us. But like, I feel like everybody was on our side. Every talking head, every person with a blue check mark was pretty much just like the Bears got screwed last night. The officiating was awful. There's a lot of talks about Vegas and the involvement, and was this a fixed game? And usually like that is not like nationally recognized, but this was pretty much everybody coming out and saying that. So it felt pretty shitty being a Bears fan and having that result and seeing all of these penalties. And the biggest one I feel like was the Cassius Marsh one. What did you see on that play, and did you think it deserved a penalty?
So, all right. So the taunting penalty in general is just BS. It's just so hard to identify. It's such an objective call where one ref can see that and say, I didn't see anything. And another ref will see it and say, oh, that was, this is the definition of the taunting call. So nobody really knows where the line is with that. He made a big play, right? And he goes and he kind of looks at that whether he's looking at the other team's bench or he was looking into the stands, who the hell knows? Right. The ref couldn't see it because he was behind him. Right. So he sees him kind of hopping over there and just, puffing his chest out a little bit. And it's football, right? Like you tackle somebody, like, how can you not do that afterwards? Right. And he wasn't in anyone's face. He was gesturing towards the sideline. Sure. Maybe. I don't think that's worth a penalty, a big one like that at the end of the game. That's deciding a game. It's just, that's ridiculous to, put such a penalty on the Bears for something like that. It was egregious for sure. But it wasn't the only one. Like I said, they had 12 for 115 yards in the game. Pittsburgh only had 5 for 30 yards. So that type of margin right there is going to kill you every time.
It's also questionable. It's also makes me think it's a little curious to have 12 and they only had 5. And some of the penalties they were calling, the lining up offsides, which happens almost every play. Just if you want, it's like holding, right? Holding happens on every single play. It's just if you want to call it or not. Also, I'm pretty sure, I think it was like Adam Hogue or maybe Adam Johns, one of the Bears writers, did the freeze frame of the last field goal, Santos 65-yarder, and it looked like TJ Watt was lined up off sides. So, I mean, it happens every play. The ref seemed a little fishy. Tony Correnti, I believe that's the guy's name who threw the flag on Cassius Marsh. Literally, as you watch in slow-mo, it's all over the internet, right? He is seeing the player running at him to get off the field. The flag has not been thrown. Marsh has done his celebration. He has walked to the sideline. He is now running back to the Bears sideline. No flags yet. He is running by Tony Correnti, and he's reaching for his belt as he's getting closer. And then the ref steps backwards and like sticks his hip out to the player and runs into him, and then throws his flag up in the air. And I saw a lot of people saying, like, you know, he threw it up in the air like it was a game-winning shot, almost held his form to say, like, hey, look at me. I'm going to call this. I'm going to determine the outcome in this game. It was really kind of like, I feel like there needs to be some sort of reprimanding of that official. Like, he needs to get fined or suspended a game. It was pretty, like you said, egregious.
100% frustrating. But I mean, the penalties aside, the first half, they were not good, right? The offense especially did not look good. Thankfully, Fields turned it around in the second half, and he's starting to look like an NFL quarterback, right? So, I mean, that was really encouraging to see that. You know, they're 3-6 now. Do we think this team is a playoff team? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it's built that way, in my opinion, with a rookie quarterback and, you know, Robinson on an expiring deal. I don't think so. Mooney looked great, couple touchdowns, really nice game for him. Good confidence boost, definitely, for him. So it's good to see that.
And I thought the play calling was actually second half was fun to watch. It felt like, you know, it felt like there was a rhythm building on that offense in the second half, and that they kept getting these plays. They kept doing a couple seam routes down the middle, and it was weird to watch a Chicago Bears offense throw some of those passes, and even some of the ones that Fields was throwing, like a couple 50-yarders incomplete that he's just chucking down the sideline. Just get it out, right? You get it out of your system. You're at least showing the defense that you're thinking about it. You're getting it out there. And I thought Fields did a great job in the second half, standing in the pocket and really under pressure, getting rid of that football right at the correct time on the numbers. Only a couple throws that were a little off. He had one for Allen Robinson that threw to the inside on a comebacker, should have been at his numbers. But I thought he played really well. And no, I don't think they're a playoff team, but I think we're starting to get some of the young offensive linemen healthy. Borum's played in 2 games in a row, right? And, you know, the defense is getting a little nicked up. It's getting a little older. I think that's the side of the ball we might need to make some moves with. But
there's talk of Tevin Jenkins getting healthy too, right?
Right. I saw him. He's running up the hill over there at the Bears facilities. So if he gets there, Larry's there, you know, they got Peters, who's a great mentor and just an awesome offensive lineman to be around. I'm hopeful for the future, and that's probably what we have to look at for this team moving forward. But I mean, Justin Fields was the #1 rated quarterback from Pro Football Focus this week.
Yeah.
Things to celebrate, even in a loss, things to celebrate.
Right. So some other NFL game notes from this week. Jacksonville pulls off the upset of the year, in my opinion.
Not help my week 9 pick.
Taking down the Bills. That was insane. Chase Edmonds goes down. James Conner explodes, 3 touchdowns. Cardinals beat San Francisco without Murray or Hopkins. The Rams lost to Tennessee. Stafford threw a pick 6. Should have been 2 pick 6s, really. I mean, threw that one off his back foot from the end zone. That was just a terrible game for the Rams. Then you got the Chiefs barely beating Jordan Love, who stepped in for Rodgers. Rodgers with the COVID, and we don't need to get into that whole story there. He's been beaten up enough about that all week, including on SNL.
Good. Pile it on.
Vikings lose another heartbreaker in overtime on a last-minute field goal in overtime. That's just classic Minnesota right there. And then the Cowboys just looked absolutely abysmal against Denver, who just lost Von Miller, right? Just traded him. So that was kind of insane.
Did not
crazy week, right? I mean, how'd your picks do?
Exactly. Did not do well for my week 9 picks. I ended up going 6-8 because of some of the, those exceptions that you just listed, some things that, most fans did not see coming. I don't think anybody saw the Jaguars beating the Bills. That's not to say that was my only miss. I had a couple misses there. I had the Bengals. They got blown out. And of course the Bears every single week. And, they've only been right 3 times for me. So we'll keep taking that L as far as we go. But yeah, 6-8 overall record, 82-54. Let's get into week 10.
Week 10, Thursday night, you got the Ravens at the Dolphins.
Ravens.
Let's do it. They're rolling. Bills at Jets.
Bills.
Sure.
They got it. Yeah. I mean, yes, that's a geographical.
Even if Mike White's starting, everybody's on the Mike White train right now.
That's a geographically rival fan base game. Bounce back win after Jacksonville. Yeah.
Yeah. The Bills should win that one pretty easily. Bucks at Washington.
Let's go Tampa.
Yep. Falcons at Cowboys.
Man. I'm Cowboys.
Saints at Titans.
Titans looking real good.
Jaguars at Colts.
Colts looking real good.
Lions.
That's a surprise team. Look out for Indianapolis. Yeah.
They're 4-5 right now, but that is a good squad. Jonathan Taylor's looking real good. Michael Pittman's real good.
Stud.
Carson Wentz really coming on. We'll talk about him a little bit later.
Got a resume. Yep. What was the
Lions
next
at
one? Steelers. At. Yep.
Sure. 0-8 Lions. You don't want to take them?
Well, actually, let's go. Let's go Detroit. Yep. Actually, I do. I think odds are in our favor. Let's go Detroit.
Browns at Patriots.
Man, Patriots. Something about that team just
Browns just rolled Cincinnati. I can't pick against the Browns after that game. Vikings at Chargers.
San Diego Chargers. LA.
Panthers at Cardinals.
Cardinals.
Eagles at Broncos. That one should be good. Seahawks at Packers.
Seattle. I think Russell Wilson's coming back, right?
Yeah.
And that should be a good one. Well, Rodgers is coming back too. Let's go Seattle.
Okay. Chiefs at Raiders.
Chiefs.
Ooh, yeah. That's a night game. That should be fun too. I'd take the Raiders there. I think the Chiefs are just looking terrible. Rams at 49ers is the Monday nighter.
Rams.
Yeah. Rams should win that one too. All right.
Okay. Let's hope for a perfect week. Hasn't happened yet. So holding out hope it happens week 10. That brings us to our next segment, Waiver Wire Wednesday. Who do we got? Who we picking up? It's getting kind of thin on that waiver wire, but it's also a make or break point right now in the season to make some moves.
There's some bye weeks happening, some injuries, a lot of crazy stuff going on, a lot of big time players that you can't really rely on at this point. So you're going to need to hit this waiver wire. And we'll start at the QB position. We mentioned Carson Wentz. He's 60% owned right now, but he's fantasy's 11th ranked player. He's got Michael Pittman emerging as a true number 1, and he gets Jacksonville this week. So if you need a quarterback, you got somebody on bye, or you got somebody that's injured, definitely look for Carson Wentz or Matt Ryan. He's got a good matchup against Dallas this week. He's 56% owned. So look for one of those two out there. Teddy Bridgewater's probably out there too. Another name to mention if you're looking for a quarterback. Moving over to running back, Kenyon Drake's 63% owned. You can see if he's out there. He seemed like Gruden, he's fallen out of favor with him, but he's been playing really well since that coaching change. He seems to be the clear passing down guy. He might have taken that job from Jalen Richard. He's got 16 plus PPR points in 3 straight games. So Kenyon Drake, check if he's available on your waiver wire if you need a running back. Somebody that's not really that owned because he was on the practice squad a couple weeks back is Jordan Howard, just 14% owned. He's got 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games as a starter. Philly needs to lean on him with Sanders. He might be back soon, but even so, Howard's looked like the better runner. Gainwell, who we were talking about a couple weeks ago, it makes me hesitant to talk about Howard because we talked about Gainwell as essentially this guy, but they brought Jordan Howard up from the practice squad and are just kind of leaning on it as more of a traditional running game rather than like a hybrid pass catching and running back. And I think Howard's just, that's who he is. He's great.
Looks good.
Yeah. Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram's 38% owned.
He's also 38
Saints
years
now.
old. I'm kidding.
Only 32, I think. But he's got 9 carries and 5 receptions against Atlanta this week, only playing 34% of the snaps, but that was up from last week. I believe it was 26% last week. So he's inching up as he gets more acclimated to this offense, which he was back in 2018. So not too long ago. But that's my guess, is that they try to recreate that old role with him and Kamara. If you remember, those two were both top 5 PPR backs for a while when they were together. Now this was, 3 years ago, but still Ingram was playing about 45% of the snaps then. He was getting the goal line work. He was getting a lot of reception opportunities. So they're both fantasy viable for sure. A deep league running back that I would look at would be Dante Foreman. He's only 1% owned. He's the 3rd back in Tennessee. So he's behind McNichols and Peterson. If you want to stash.
Yeah.
Shout out to Masahula.
It seems, yeah. It also seems there in Tennessee, you can kind of plug in a running back there and that thing's just humming. That team's a good football team.
Yeah. He's kind of a big back though. I feel like he could fill in as a Henry guy. So kind of sneaky stash there potentially if you're in like a 14 teamer. As far as wide receivers go, Elijah Moore is a top ad this week. He had 2 touchdowns, career high in receptions and receiving yards. Was the best fantasy football wide receiver of the week. He played in that Thursday night game. So it is kind of a carousel at the QB position in New York right now. I think Mike White should start this week though. And Moore's looked great with him. Corey Davis might be back as well, but I think Moore's still a great pickup. Rookie wide receivers have historically been better in the second half of their rookie season. So look at those rookie wide receivers. Another one to mention again, Rashad Bateman. I mentioned him in the last couple of podcasts, right? His ownership percentage is still 36%. He's looked fantastic. He's getting a lot of opportunities, only playing 60% of the snaps. So if that comes up, it's going to be, maybe he has a breakout game. But he's got 6 targets in 3 straight games. So I think he needs to be rostered everywhere for sure. Michael Gallup's also coming back. He's a good player, still at best the number 3 on the offense though. But all signs point to him returning this week. He's 48% owned, so you can check if he's out there. Brandon Ayouk, 61% owned. So he went 6 for 89 and a touchdown this week. He's got 7 targets in back-to-back games, so he might be coming on as well. You can check if he's out there. A lot of people that drafted him early and were expecting a blow up from him up right off the bat might have dropped him.
Right.
Deep league dart throw here. Danny Amendola, 0% owned. So you heard it here first. This might be somebody to pick up. 7 targets this week in Tyrod's return. So it seems like those two maybe have some chemistry. So that's worth keeping an eye on if you need a deep league stash.
I like this next name you got here, the tight end. I hate that we just played him, but he is looking pretty good.
Pat Freiermuth. 41% owned. So he's still out there in a lot of leagues. Been consistent the last few weeks. He's a good pickup for Pittsburgh. I think they're saying might be the new Heath Miller. They say that about every tight end they get, but he's looking great. Dan Arnold and Tyler Conklin are a couple of consistency plays. I think both of them are under 40% owned. So you can check if they're out there. And then if you need a defense, Denver and Tennessee have been looking good the past few weeks. So I think I would look to grab both of those.
Nice, man. Let's look forward to this week. Obviously no Bears game, so I'm going to count that as a win towards my pick 'em. Hopefully some of our listeners pick up some of these players as well, and they could help themselves out in their fantasy leagues as we kind of get going here. It's my teams are falling apart due to injury. Maybe that's happening to you. Maybe some of your players are getting healthy, but good luck.
Where do you think Odell Beckham lands? That should be the last question, I guess.
There's a lot of talk from him going to Seattle, right?
We talked about Michael Thomas last week, and boy, were we wrong on that. Because like the next day, he's like, "Yeah, I'm not playing the season."
Yeah, the next day he comes out and says, "Season's over," and we're like, "Great." I think Odell. I think Seattle is a very entertaining destination for him. I also think when I first heard the news that it was being released in our group chat, I said Baltimore. I think he'd go there and help out that receiving core. How about you?
Yes, that's an interesting one. I know the Saints were checking in on him at the trade deadline. It's whether he'd want to go there now at this point because he went through the waiver process and no one claimed him. Mm-hmm. I think the Packers is interesting one that's been thrown out there. They don't make big splash moves like this though. But I could see the Chiefs. They're always in on this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I that would be my guess. They have Josh Gordon. He hasn't really been doing much. And Demarcus Robinson has been the two. So you could put Beckham in there pretty easily. I could see him in that offense. So I think that's my pick.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it happens soon.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's our show today. Thanks again to Steph Noh for joining us. For Dan Slowick, I'm Evan Bierman. Cheers.
Peace.